Well, I'm not hot or rich, but I can certainly make a drink that is. Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it's Wednesday, we have another cocktail video coming at you. We're closing out our month of hot cocktails with one of my favorites, which is the Hot Buttered Rum. Hot Buttered Rum is essentially a toddy. It's a variation on a toddy. So the history is essentially the same as the toddies. These cocktails go back to at least the 1600s, 1700s. There's essentially three different ways you can make a Hot Buttered Rum, and we're going to make one of each. So we're going to do a classic, we're going to do a fat wash, and we're going to do a batter. They are all perfectly great ways to make the cocktail. A Hot Buttered Rum is a great cocktail to have. It requires very little preparation. If you've got butter and you've got rum, or batter, then you can make this thing very, very quickly, very easily. You can make them en masse very quickly. Prepare, pour, and you're good to go. So now that we've sort of prepared a little bit for what this cocktail is going to be, let's go ahead and put them in the glass. So before we start actually preparing the drink, a Hot Buttered Rum has a very important ingredient. It's rum. So we're going to start off by tasting three different rums, and these are all rums we're going to be using today. I'm going to start off with Diplomatico Mantuano. This is a Venezuelan rum. It's one that I like a lot. I'm a little biased. My spouse is from Venezuela. I think it's sweet. It's not overly sweet. This is a really good rum to keep around. I mean, it's not bad for sipping. It's great for cocktails. It's a good price point. Yeah, Mantuano is just a real solid rum. It's got a lot of brown sugar notes. You can taste the molasses in there. It's definitely got some sweetness to it. I don't think over sweetened. This is a great rum to keep around. The next one we're going to go with is Appleton Estate. So Appleton Estate is one of the biggest distilleries, might be the biggest distillery in Jamaica. So we're sort of dipping our toe into Jamaican rum here because the Appleton Estate, while it is Jamaican, it is certainly not the Jamaicaniest of rums. Your heavy Jamaican rums that are sort of typical of the region is going to be more like our Dr. Bird, which we're going to sample here in a little bit. It's got a very overripe banana. The term that's used more often is just funky. It's a very funky tasting rum. So on our Appleton Estate, we're definitely starting to get some of that overripe banana, but it's very much kind of around the outside. And this is the 8-year, I should say. Yeah, so you've got that Jamaican sort of tinge to it, but it's not overpowering. Again, you got some of that overripe banana on the outside. It's a little bit drier than the Mantuano, so there's not quite as much sweetness there. It is still a fairly sweet rum, but not quite as sweet as the Mantuano. And then finally, one of my favorites, our Dr. Bird, and this is a Jamaican rum, and it's one that I like a lot. So yeah, just tons of banana, funky notes. It's real strong. Same on the palate. Also a little drier. Sweet, but definitely on the drier side, especially considering the other two. Tons of banana, tons of overripe banana, and just Jamaican funk. This is kind of, for some people, kind of an acquired taste. It's very much going to be different from the Bacardis or Captain Morgans that you've had. If you try some very heavy Jamaican rum, you're going to know you had something. So now that we've tried these out a little bit, let's go ahead and put them in the cocktail and see what we think. And we're back magically surrounded by ingredients, and who doesn't want to be surrounded by rum? We're going to start off with Dave Wondrich's take on Jerry Thomas's original, well, not original, the cocktail goes back much further than that, but Jerry Thomas's 1862 take on the Hot Buttered Rum. Now, this is going to be the best. If you haven't done any preparation, people show up and they're like demanding Hot Buttered Rum, which who among us hasn't had that happen multiple times? So this one, we're going to start off with, not surprisingly enough, butter. It really doesn't give an exact amount, so we're just going to toss in a good pat of butter. This is also going to be spiced. So in here we've got a teaspoon of sugar and a teaspoon of a combination of allspice and ground cloves. So toss that in there. Now they asked for 2 ounces of Jamaican rum. So in this one, we're going to go with our slightly less funky Appleton Estate 8-year. There's also an Appleton Estate signature that would go very well in this, but I don't happen to have any of that right at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and toss in 2 ounces of our Appleton Estate 8-year. Now for our second, this rum we didn't sample on its own because it's kind of a unique little thing. So this is a fat wash rum. So what you do to make this, you essentially melt butter, and what you want to do is brown it. So when you brown your butter, you want to leave it in the pan for long enough that it actually turns brown. It brings out a lot more flavors. It's a more flavorful, more rich sort of a flavor. A lot of flavors in one sentence. So you make the brown butter in a pan. You combine that with your rum. You put that into some kind of a sealed container. I use a bottle. You can use a Tupperware container, whatever works. And you want to keep that sort of moving a little bit for a little while. Once it looks like things have really combined well, and you can put that in the refrigerator, your butter is going to solidify. You then cut a hole in the top of there and pour that back into your original bottle, and you have a fat washed rum, in this case a butter wash rum. So a lot of those fats that are in the butter have combined with the liquor, but you don't have any of the heaviness. There's none of the actual butters in there. So it's a really nice way of making kind of an interesting infusion of the rum. And you can actually do it with a lot of things. You can do it with bacon. You can do it with you do it with beef fat. You do it just about anything you can think of. So we're going to start off with 2 ounces of our fat washed rum. Now in this case, I just used the American version of Havana Club. If you want to go with something a little more funky, more Jamaican, that's definitely something you can use any of these, and that'll work just fine. And then we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of demerara syrup. Demerara syrup's always fun to play with, especially when you go for the 2-to-1 ratio, because it's very, very thick. And sometimes it takes a while to pour. All right, so we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce for demerara syrup. Now I'm not putting a lot of spice in here, so we're going to toss in just 1/4 of an ounce of our allspice dram. And I think that's going to work real well in here. I think we've been using a lot of our allspice dram for this, just because of the season. It's a nice spice. It makes you feel warm on the inside. So. Now our easy one is our batter. So I'm going to try to find the recipe that I used to make my original batter, and you want to have as close to about a tablespoon or so of your batter as possible. I'm going to try and find the original recipe that I use for this. It's a very, very rich recipe. It uses vanilla ice cream and some spices and some sugars and a whole bunch of other stuff. We're not going to add any more sweetener into this because this is going to be plenty sweet with just that batter. And then in this one, I'm going to go ahead and split our rum. So I'm going to use 1 ounce of our very funky Jamaican Dr. Bird. Another good one you could use here would be Smith & Cross. Very, very funky Jamaican rum. And the other half, we're going to use our Diplomatico Mantuano, because I like this one. All right, so we have our drinks all ready to get warmed up with some water. Now I am going to use hot water in these. There are some people that prefer to use a hot cider. You could do that as well. I kind of want to keep these kind of the same base, so I'm going to use water for these, but sometime we might come back and try these again with some cider and see if that tastes better or worse, or how it affects it. Now let's get some hot water. And we have our hot water. Now again, you can measure this out if you want to. What we're looking for is 4 to 6 ounces of hot water, so in that range. But this is not an exact science, so we're going to go ahead and just top off each one. This pours a little all over the place. All right, now your batter, when you got to give this one a little bit, because that batter's not going to melt right away. So you want to kind of get in there with your stir, just agitate it a little bit. And this is going to be a thick cocktail. Let that sit for just a second. The other ones, just going to make sure we get our rum, or excuse, get our butter melted. Our rum is already melted. As long as your water is hot enough, this shouldn't take too long. And our middle one, where it is an infusion, this one really doesn't require much in the way of stirring at all. All right. So I think we're good in the middle. We're going to do something different. We're going to try the one in the middle that these kind of melt a little bit. So this first one is with our butter washed rum. That's really good. It's very sweet. I put 3/4 of an ounce of demerara in there. It probably could be okay with 1/2 ounce. The allspice dram is coming through really well. Again, I put 1/4 ounce in there. I definitely would stay at 1/4 ounce. Again, with allspice dram as well, you maybe even go for a bar spoon. That allspice dram has a lot. It talks a lot in a cocktail. The thing with fat washed spirits is it's kind of an interesting experience because you're getting sort of that buttery mouthfeel, but it's not a thick mouthfeel. It still tastes like a fairly normal cocktail. So you're getting that a little bit of mouthfeel of butter, but it's not like a thick butter. This is going to be good, I think, if you don't want anything too heavy, because it is fat washed. You don't actually have any butter in there, but you are getting that flavor. All right. So this is the Jerry Thomas 1862 version. So this is the one you can pretty much throw together anytime as long as you have butter and rum, which if you don't have butter and rum in your house, what's wrong with you? Okay, this one, it calls for the allspice and the cloves right in the drink. To be honest, I don't really like that cocktail very much. I actually put less cloves and allspice in there than the recipe called for, and I still think they take over the drink too much. I also put in what I thought was a pretty good amount of butter, and I think that the fat wash rum actually comes across as more buttery, which is kind of confusing because this has a pat of butter right in it. I don't think this is bad necessarily. It's definitely not my favorite. I think if you make this at home, do a little bit of experimentation with your spices, and definitely go a little less is more on that. All right, and I think our batter is pretty well melted, so let's see what we think of this. I mean, that's just tastes like walking into a warm cabin after you came in out of the snow. It's very thick. It's fairly sweet. Although we haven't added any more sweetener after the batter, so it's not like cloyingly so. This is great. It's got a great mouthfeel to it. The nice thing about these is once you've made the batter, you can make these pretty much any time. You just toss in your, as you see, toss in your batter, toss in your rum, toss in your hot water, and you're good to go. But it is a very thick mouthfeel. I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say chocolate shake thick, but much thicker than sort of your conventional cocktail. I've made these two many times before. This is the first time I've made sort of the original version. This one, I think that we might make this work by sort of altering the spices. And I'm very much torn between these two. It really depends on what you want. If you want something that's a little bit lighter and that is not going to be quite as heavy on your stomach, then I would definitely go with the fat wash because you're getting that mouthfeel of the butter, but you're not getting sort of the heaviness of it. But it's also very balanced, very spiced, just a real yummy sort of a cocktail. But if you are in the throes of a month-long sub-zero temperatures and you just want something to make you drink your feelings, this is the way to go. it just fills you up. It just fills you up with warmth and happiness. So I think generally speaking, this is probably the better one for you, because remember this has got, and again, I'll try to post the recipe if I can find my original recipe for the batter. But I mean, this has got ice cream and brown sugar and a whole bunch of other stuff in it. So it is not what you call a light cocktail from a diet perspective. So I guess what I would say is if you want something that is going to really warm you up, both mentally and physically, go for this one. If you want something that's good but is also not too heavy on you, go for this one. And if you want to experiment around a little bit, try this, but really you're gonna have to play with your spices a little bit and see where you want it to be. Yeah. So on that bombshell, I think we're going to end it there, and I'm going to end with this one. So I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and have a good drink.